I heard it before I saw it. The laughter, the clink of champagne flutes, the thud of suitcase wheels rolling across the hardwood Jake sanded with his own hands. I stood at the bottom of the stairs in my black dress, the hem brushing my ankles, the faint sweetness of funeral roses still clinging to me like a stubborn ghost. I pressed my palm to the banister Jake used to polish on Sunday afternoons and told my knees to hold. "Don't expect a penny of Dad's 92 million, my son had said that morning, his tone clipped and efficient, like an accountant closing a file. "Let's not make this awkward." Awkward. By afternoon, our family had reconvened at the estate. Not to mourn, not to remember, but to celebrate. That was the word my daughter-in-law used when she swept in with a tray of bubbling glasses. "We're celebrating Dad's legacy," she sang. "He built an empire and now we keep it going." "And exorcise a few ghosts," someone muttered behind her. Laughter bloomed. I stayed where I was, my hand on wood that had known every season of my life, while my grandson drifted past with a neon stack of sticky notes. He tagged the long case clock. He tagged Jake's leather wingback. He tagged the cabinet with our wedding china. "Vintage," his girlfriend said, calculating. It was a scavenger hunt in a museum none of them had paid to enter. "Number this wall," my granddaughter called, waving her phone toward the dining room. A remodeling app glowed in her palm, grids and measurements on top of my wallpaper like surgical lines. "Spa room here. Definitely better lighting. This place smells like mothballs and death." No one offered me a chair. No one asked if I'd eaten. They steered me to the front hall like a patient waiting for radiology. "You'll be more comfortable away from the noise," and set a paper plate of dry chicken and overdone potatoes on a side table next to a mop bucket and a broom with a broken handle. I ate because it was there and because hunger is easier to manage than grief. The chicken tasted like chalk. It scraped my throat going down. From the living room I heard the cataloging continue. "Lake House is ours," my son said, voice bright like he'd won a raffle. "Boat's already in my name." "Taking the Lexus," a nephew called, casual as a weather report. "Dad told me at Christmas." "I want the Hermes scarves," one of the girls chimed. "Even if they're hers, she doesn't use them." They laughed. They laughed while the roses on the driveway curled at the edges, unwatered since the morning we put Jake in the ground. "Check her pulse while we read," someone joked from the study louder than he thought. "I thought she'd go first." I held my paper plate with both hands to keep it from shaking. The hallway was cool. The house was not. My daughter-in-law returned with her bright tray. "So," she said, smiling like a hostess on a television show, "we're thinking it's best if you transition downstairs for a bit. The little room off the laundry." "The laundry room," I said before I could help myself. "Technically a utility room," she corrected, face tight with a politeness sharp enough to cut. "There's space for a cot." Our bedroom, my bedroom, existed upstairs or had until 3 hours ago. I could hear drawers opening, the soft thwack of closet doors, the roll of a suitcase down the hall I had vacuumed 1,000 times. Perfume bottles clinked. Silk whispered. Books thudded into boxes. "Donation," someone had written in thick black marker on the first lid I glimpsed. "Out of date" on the second. "Old lady junk" on the third. Their labels stuck to me like burrs. I did not ask them to stop. I did not ask them to wait. I slid my hand into the pocket of my sweater and touched the crisp edges of the document I had kept safe for 15 years. A notarized banking memorandum naming me as co-founder and early investor of the family trust. My name was there in blue ink, not black, exactly the kind of detail lawyers like to circle in red. They didn't know. They never asked. Back when the company was sinking and the word bankruptcy stalked our dinner conversations like an unwelcome dog, no attorney or accountant saved us. I did. I sold everything that bore a memory heavy enough to hurt. My mother's emerald necklace, the wedding bangles that clicked on my wrist when Jake spun me in the kitchen, the brooch I wore the night he asked me to marry him. I wired the money straight into escrow and told Jake, "Use it, but never tell them where it came from." He didn't. He kept my name where I had put it. Behind the curtain, there is a stubborn kind of pride that grows in the dark. It doesn't bloom. It anchors. That night, I also drafted a strategy on yellow paper while the house slept. A multi-phase expansion plan built on trends the men at the table would only spot when they were fashionable enough to seem like their idea. I signed it with a clean little pseudonym no one in that office would recognize and mailed it without a return address. The proposal became the spine of the IPO 6 months later. $40 million in fresh investment. A plaque in the lobby honoring his ingenuity. I made soup and smiled. In the years that followed, small envelopes arrived every quarter from a licensing firm in a city I never visited. I slid them into a folder on the top shelf of the hall closet, behind the linens where no one dusted. My name sits on the patent paperwork, the one that links that anonymous framework to a registered idea. I never cashed the royalties. I didn't need the money. I needed the quiet. Now they pace my house, neon slip after neon slip branding my life like cattle. Now they set legacy and mint inventory. Now they handled my history with bare hands and laughed at the smell of mothballs. Does she even know what year it is? A cousin sneered, breezing past the doorway. If we forward her mail, one of the boys whispered. Can we keep cashing her pension? They roared like it was a comedy club. I didn't. I sat. I breathed. I kept one hand on my pocket. When the champagne ran out and the music stuttered to a halt, the scent of greed remained, thicker than the dust on the drapes. I rose slowly. My knees hummed a protest. I steadied myself against the sink and glanced through the small window over it. The roses along the drive bent their heads like penitent women. Jake had planted them the first summer we moved in. His palms stained with soil, his grin easy. No one had watered them in days. I turned back to the house and walked like a ghost walks, lightly like I had no weight they could tag with a sticker. No one asked where I was going. No one noticed that I noticed them. At the study door, my son was animated, handsome. A man who would photograph well for a lifestyle magazine about inheritance and taste. We should gut the kitchen, he said. Open the space. Get rid of the smell. Of onions and love? I wanted to ask. Instead I folded my hands. It's what Dad would have wanted, he added, and there it was again. That phrase people used to keep from tasting the truth. Tie her mail to our address. A younger one, Ethan or Evan, I don't bother keeping track, said as he passed the kitchen door. We can handle the checks. This is how erasure begins. Not with a shout but with a shrug. I climbed the stairs. They had already labeled boxes with the years of my life. Donation. Out of date. Old lady junk. On the oak nightstand where I kept letters Jake wrote me when he'd fly to Dallas and pretend he was fine. A neon pink square bloomed, mine. I pressed my palm to the wood and felt its cool refusal to warm for anyone else. Make the master pink, a girl giggled down the hall. Like rose pink. It'll be healing. I could have laughed if I hadn't already learned how to keep sound inside my teeth. Back downstairs, my daughter-in-law leaned against the doorway, tray balanced like a prize. She wore a precise smile, the kind women practice in mirrors so they can wield it without wobble. She doesn't need a room, she told the group. Just a bed. Until she, A friend of my grandson's, polite, uncertain, murmured. There's bottled water in the garage fridge. Maybe grab one? You look pale. He didn't wait for my answer. They never do. I stayed another hour. They sorted art, land, stories. Someone rolled a suitcase into the hallway and staked a claim on the master for the weekend. Whether to repaint in rose or champagne became the debate of the day. I held my tea with both hands to stop the tremble. When the clock chimed 5, still mine, still right, I stood. The hallway tilted like a boat leaving shore. I steadied myself on the banister and waited for the room to settle. The folder in the hall closet weighed on my mind like a key in a pocket you're afraid to lose. Jake's voice followed on its heels. Don't let money make you doubt what you know. Don't hand them the map. I went to the closet. I shut the door behind me like I was entering a chapel. The top shelf was a geography only I knew. Behind the linens, the good ones, the wedding ones I ironed while watching the news the day our son was born, sat the folder no one ever touched. Inside, the original proposal in my cramped writing, the licensing letters, the memorandum with my name in blue. Proof that I existed in ink that couldn't be laughed out of a room. I slid the folder into my tote and felt my heartbeat steady. When I came out, the study door was ajar. A murmur rose and fell. Lawyer voices, sad voices, the false hush of a family trying on reverence for a size. The executor had arrived at last. A lean man with a brown briefcase and a jaw that looked tired of telling wealthy people no. Everyone to the study, he called. Let's settle. The will reads now. The laughter quieted. The sticky notes fluttered in the sudden breeze of movement. My granddaughter slipped her phone into her pocket, her remodeling app still glinting neon plans across my papered walls. My daughter-in-law placed the tray on the mantel, straightened her sweater, and took a seat she hadn't bothered to offer me all day. I stood in the doorway because there wasn't a chair left, because they had used them all to make a future that didn't include my shape. The executor cleared his throat. Pages whispered. The house adjusted its ribcage. My son shot me a quick glance, impatient, maybe anxious, maybe both, and then fixed his eyes on the briefcase like the leather itself could bless him. Let's begin, the man said, and silence unfurled like a tablecloth. My son's knee bounced once under the desk. We all know how this goes, he told the room, attempting a shepherd's tone. Mom understands. Dad was clear. The company needs continuity. I pressed my palm to the cool brass of the doorknob and pictured the roses outside. The way their heads bowed not in surrender but in the elegant mathematics of survival. You bend. You don't break. Then you bloom again when it embarrasses the people who forgot to water you. The executor read the preamble, the bequests, the little instructions Jake had written in a stilted hand I recognized as his brace against dying. He reached the section on the trust. My son leaned forward, eager, sure. The room breathed in. And then the man said my name. For a heartbeat the house lost gravity. I felt it. I saw my son's face drain, his mouth open, the soft swear he tried to swallow. Someone muttered. She's still breathing? Another voice, my grandson's I think, snickered. Check her pulse while we read. I did not sit. I did not speak. I slid my hand into my pocket and touched blue ink. The executor lifted his head. There is also an addendum, he said, eyes flicking to me, then back to the page. Dated 15 years ago, notarized, on file with the bank. I could taste the room then. Metal, champagne, the hot dime of fear. My daughter-in-law's smile flattened like a tire. Someone's sticky note peeled off the grandfather clock and floated to the floor like a neon leaf. Before we continue, the executor said, his voice steady, I'm required to ask if Mrs. Monroe wishes to be seated. No one moved. No one offered. Thank you, I said, my voice the clearest thing I owned. I'll stand. The man nodded. The paper rustled again. The hall seemed to lean in. And now, he said, we come to the part of the will none of you asked about. My son swallowed. I watched his throat work like he'd just bitten chalk. I heard Jake in the space between words. Don't hand them the map. I didn't. I simply tightened my fingers around the edge of my pocket and waited, heartbeat calm and loud and undeniable, for the next sentence to fall, knowing that when it did, the house would finally be quiet enough to hear who I'd always been. The lawyer's voice echoed in the paneled study, each syllable settling on the mahogany desk like dust no one dared wipe away. My name had been spoken, and for a second it was as though the air itself bent under the weight of it. I didn't sit. They didn't offer. My son's face had gone pale, and for once, the charm he wore like a uniform slipped. His jaw clenched, his knee bounced. My daughter-in-law's carefully rehearsed smile tightened until it cracked into something brittle. The executor cleared his throat. Mrs. Monroe is listed as co-founder and co-trustee of the Family Estate Trust, per documentation filed and notarized 15 years ago. These records are binding. A beat of silence followed. Then the eruption. That's impossible, my son snapped. Dad never mentioned. Dad never needed to, the lawyer said calmly, laying the papers flat. The documents speak for themselves. I felt the tremor in my knees steady. It wasn't victory I tasted. It was recognition long denied, now undeniable. From the corner my granddaughter blurted. She doesn't even know what year it is. Her voice was shrill, desperate. You can't seriously. Enough, the lawyer said sharply, and the room fell still. His eyes flicked toward me. Mrs. Monroe, if you'd like to speak. But I didn't. Not yet. Silence was my armor. Let them sweat in it. Let them turn on each other before I opened my mouth. My grandson Ethan, the loud one, scoffed. This is ridiculous. She's barely hanging on. How is she supposed to manage millions of dollars? We'll just end up doing it for her. The lawyer raised a brow. That will not be your decision. The trust designates her rights explicitly. They shifted uneasily, their greed now spiced with fear. It was a new perfume in the room, sharper, heavier, choking them more than it ever could me. I kept my eyes on the grandfather clock they'd tried to claim. Its steady ticking was a reminder. Time belongs to no one, yet they had spent years trying to steal mine. Finally I spoke. My voice was low but cut through the tension like glass. You thought I was a shadow, a burden, an old ghost in your way. But shadows don't sign bank memorandums. Ghosts don't draft proposals that save companies. My son's eyes widened. He knew then. He knew I had been there all along, woven into every triumph he thought was his inheritance. I drew the folded document from my pocket and placed it on the desk. The blue ink glowed in the lamplight. This is my name, I said. My signature. My blood in those numbers you've lived off for years. No one moved. No one breathed. And then from the back of the room my niece muttered, if this is true, then everything changes. Yes, everything changes. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, reading further. Per the trust stipulations, Mrs. Monroe holds veto power over the distribution of assets, including properties, financial accounts, and intellectual holdings. The words landed like blows. One by one, I watched their faces sink under the realization. The house, the cars, the money, it was all still tethered to me. I stood straighter. For the first time in years my spine felt unbroken. But in their silence I sensed something else simmering. Not just resentment, something darker. My son's gaze, once impatient, now carried a glint that chilled me. My daughter-in-law's smile was gone, replaced by calculation. My grandchildren no longer looked at me like an inconvenience. They looked at me like an obstacle. And obstacles in their world are meant to be removed. The lawyer closed the folder with finality. That concludes this portion. We will reconvene tomorrow to finalize distribution discussions. He stood, offering me a slight bow of respect no one else had thought to give. I nodded, though my pulse was already racing. Tomorrow. That word carried a weight heavier than tonight's silence. Because tonight they had been shocked. But tomorrow they'd be ready. And I had to decide whether my truth was enough to keep me safe in a house that no longer felt like mine. That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked in ways I no longer recognized. Every sound felt sharper, heavier. Like the walls themselves were listening, waiting. I lay in the narrow bed they had shoved into the downstairs laundry room, staring at the single bare bulb above me. It flickered once, then steadied. The smell of bleach clung to my throat. Upstairs, footsteps moved across my old floorboards. Laughter hushed this time like thieves tiptoeing with stolen goods. I closed my eyes, but I heard them still. The scrape of drawers, the muffled slam of a wardrobe. Every slam was a memory stripped from me, boxed and claimed. When I finally drifted into something like sleep, it wasn't rest, it was battle. Jake's face came to me, not smiling as it used to, but stern, almost warning. You gave them everything, he said. Now don't you dare give them the rest. I woke with my fist clenched around the papers in my sweater pocket. My pulse hammered against my palm. I rose, knees aching, and pressed the document flat on the folding table. The ink was still there. My name was still there. I wasn't invisible. By morning, the air in the house had shifted. My son didn't look at me when he passed through the kitchen. He grabbed a mug, poured coffee, and muttered something to Tanya, who hovered close behind him. She caught my eye and smiled, not warmth but a blade disguised as courtesy. You must be tired, she said sweetly. We were thinking. Maybe a retirement community would be better for you. More peaceful. More your speed. My lips curved but not into a smile. And who decided that? Everyone, she said simply, as though everyone carried the weight of God. I leaned back in the chair, wrapping my fingers around the mug to stop their shaking. You'll forgive me if I don't take votes in my own house. Mark's jaw tightened. Mom! I raised my hand and he stopped. For the first time in years he stopped. Don't mom me when what you really mean is problem, I said, my voice low. You think I don't hear the way you talk when you forget I'm in the room? I hear every word. I always have. His eyes flickered, and in that flicker I saw it fear. Just for a second. He knew what I held. He knew I could strip the masks away. The day unfolded in a haze of tension. Every time I walked into a room, voices died mid-sentence. My grandson ripped one of his neon stickers off the buffet when he saw me staring. My granddaughter closed her design app. Their greed had been brazen yesterday. Today it was caged, teeth behind bars, waiting. In the afternoon, I retreated to the garden. The roses Jake had planted drooped, thirsty, forgotten. I knelt slowly, painfully, and touched the soil. Dry. My hands trembled as I pulled the hose closer. As the water spread, the earth drank greedily, like it had been waiting for me. A strange calm settled over me. Maybe the roses were the only ones still loyal. I heard the back door open behind me. My niece's voice floated out, casual, cruel. She's not going to last much longer. Look at her. She doesn't have to, Ethan replied. As long as she signs something. I froze, the hose slipping from my grasp. Water pooled at my knees. She won't sign, my niece said. Then we'll make her. Their voices faded as the door clicked shut. I stayed on the ground, the water soaking into the soil, my heart thundering. They thought I was weak. They thought age made me breakable, manipulatable, disposable. But they didn't know me. Not really. That night I locked my door. Though I knew the lock was flimsy. I tucked the documents under my pillow. My pulse wouldn't slow. Sleep wouldn't come. Around midnight, I heard the handle rattle. Once. Twice. A pause. Then footsteps retreating down the hall. I clutched the papers tighter, whispering into the dark. You'll not take me that easily. But I knew then this was no longer about inheritance. This was survival. Morning light spilled through the blinds, slicing my little laundry room cell into stripes. I sat on the edge of the cot, the paper still warm beneath my pillow. My fingers felt stiff, my back sore. But my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Fear has a way of clearing the fog. When I shuffled to the kitchen, the house was too quiet. No laughter, no clinking of glasses. Just whispers that stopped when I entered. My daughter-in-law was at the counter, stirring sugar into her coffee. She didn't offer me any. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "Rough night." Her tone was casual, but her eyes weren't. They flickered to the sweater pocket where I kept the documents, as if she could see straight through the wool. I slept just fine, I said, though the dark circles under my eyes told another story. Mark came in a moment later. He didn't greet me. He just grabbed his car keys and muttered, "We'll be back later. Don't go anywhere." The way he said it, it wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. They left and I sat alone in the kitchen. My tea grew cold, untouched. I stared at the walls I had papered myself, at the photographs that had been stripped down one by one. My life had been dismantled in front of me, like a house being gutted while the foundation still stood. And then it hit me. They thought I had no moves left. They thought I was trapped. But I wasn't. Not yet. I climbed the stairs, every step a battle with my knees, and opened the linen closet. There it was, the folder I had hidden years ago, tucked beneath sheets no one else touched. Inside were copies, receipts, patents, and letters. Proof of everything I had done. Proof of everything they denied. I carried the folder back down to my room, set it on the table, and spread the pages out like a general laying out a battle plan. Each line of ink was a weapon. Each signature, each date, each stamp, it was all mine. The front door slammed. Voices filled the hall. They were back. I swept the documents into a neat stack and slid them beneath the mattress just as Tanya appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, her smile stretched thin. "Tidying," I said evenly. Her eyes lingered on the mattress. Too long. Too curious. She knew. That evening, the lawyer returned for the second session. The family gathered in the study again, restless, brittle. I walked in last, my step steady, my chin high. He cleared his throat. "We'll begin with the remaining stipulations of the trust." But before he could continue, Mark interrupted. "We need to question her capacity. She's not well. Look at her." My heart pounded, but I kept my face calm. The lawyer frowned. "Capacity challenges require medical evaluation. Unless you have a doctor's report." "We'll get one," Tanya cut in. "She shouldn't be making decisions that affect millions. It's irresponsible." I let them speak, let their words fill the air like smoke. And then I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "My husband trusted me with his life's work," I said, my voice steady. "I saved this family when no one else could. And if you try to erase me again, I promise you, I'll take every penny of it with me. I'd rather see it burn than watch you carve it up like vultures." The room went still. My words hung in the air, heavier than any paper the lawyer could hold. For a moment, just a moment, I saw fear in their eyes again. Not fear of me as a person, but fear of the power they thought I had lost. The lawyer shuffled his papers. "We'll continue tomorrow," he said quickly, sensing the storm. As they filed out, my granddaughter brushed past me, muttering under her breath, "You won't make it to tomorrow." The chill that ran through me then was sharper than any winter wind. I returned to my room, locked the flimsy door again, and pressed my back against it. My hands shook, but I forced them still. They thought they could scare me into silence. They thought they could push me out like a broken chair. But they had forgotten one thing. I had nothing left to lose. And a woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous of all. The night after the second reading was the longest of my life. I lay awake, listening to the house groan under the weight of secrets and greed. Every floorboard creak sounded like a footstep. Every shadow stretched itself into something sinister. I kept my documents under the mattress, but even that felt unsafe. What good was paper against blood? Sometime near midnight, I heard the front door open, then close softly. Voices whispered in the hall. Not laughter this time, just low, urgent murmurs. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. "She won't budge. We can't let her stall everything. Signatures, find a way." Then silence. I lay perfectly still, clutching my pillow, praying they'd pass my door. The knob rattled once, then stopped. Footsteps faded. My chest hurt from holding my breath. By dawn, I made my decision. I couldn't wait for them to make their move. I had to make mine first. I dressed slowly, carefully. My black funeral dress still hung on the back of the door, faintly smelling of roses and rain. I chose it again, not for mourning but for armor. Let them see what they tried to bury and failed. At breakfast, the family gathered, pretending at normalcy. Toast popped, coffee brewed, plates clinked. But beneath it all, tension hummed like a low, dangerous current. Mark finally broke the silence. "Mom, you can't keep dragging this out. The company, the estate, they need leadership. You're not in a position." I cut him off with a single raised hand. "I led before you were old enough to spell the word." He flushed, but Tanya smirked, her lipstick perfect even at 7 a.m. "Oh, come on. You're rewriting history now? No one remembers you doing any of that." I leaned forward. "That's because I made sure they remembered him instead. My husband. Your father. I gave him the glory. But don't mistake silence for absence." Her smile faltered. I reached into my sweater and pulled out the first copy from the folder. A notarized memorandum. My name in blue ink. I laid it in the middle of the table. "You want proof? There it is. And there's more. Enough to choke every one of your lies." The room froze. Ethan snorted. "So what? A piece of paper? You think a judge is going to hand everything to you because of this?" I locked eyes with him. "No. He'll hand it to me because there are 20 more just like it. Because every patent, every wire transfer, every early contract has my fingerprints on it. You think I hid in the shadows? No. I built them." The silence stretched, then cracked into panic. They began talking over one another. "We need to see those documents. She's bluffing. She's crazy. If this gets out." I let them spin, then spoke softly, cutting through the noise. "You should have been careful who you buried alive." That was when Mark slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. This ends today." His voice was trembling, not with anger but with fear. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He knew I was the one piece of the puzzle he could never erase. The lawyer arrived an hour later for the third reading. I stood tall as he entered, the stack of documents hidden under my arm. But before he could sit, Tanya blocked his path. "We need to speak privately first," she said, her voice sugar but her eyes venom. The lawyer glanced at me. "That won't be necessary." "It's absolutely necessary," Mark snapped. And in that moment I understood. They weren't going to wait for the courts or for the law or even for reason. They were going to cut me out the way one prunes a branch, swiftly, mercilessly, and without regret. I touched the edge of the folder, my lifeline, my shield. But I also felt something else rise in me, something older, fiercer. The same strength that had made me sell my jewels, write the plans, save the empire. All without applause. They wanted war? Then they would finally learn who I was when I stopped pretending to be invisible. The third reading never truly began. The lawyer's leather briefcase was still on the table, unopened, when the shouting started. Tanya circled the room like a predator in heels, her voice pitched sweet but poisoned. She's old, confused, clinging to scraps of paper. You can't seriously let her derail everything. My children's futures depend on this. The lawyer raised a hand. Mrs. Monroe's documents are valid. They predate your claims by years. Mark slammed his fist against the desk. We'll contest it. We'll drag her through every court in Tennessee if we have to. I leaned forward, folding my trembling hands together. My voice was quiet, but it cut through their panic. And every court will see my name. Every ledger. Every patent. Every transfer. Do you want to gamble millions on the hope I can't survive long enough to testify? The room stilled. Their faces betrayed them. Fear mixed with something darker. That was when Ethan blurted. Then maybe she shouldn't survive that long. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Everyone froze. Tanya's painted lips twitched into something between horror and approval. Mark didn't scold him. He didn't say a word. The lawyer's eyes widened. I suggest you think very carefully about what you're implying. But I already knew. They'd crossed a line, spoken aloud the thing they'd been circling for days. I stood, my knees aching but steady. Do you hear yourselves? Fighting like jackals while your father's roses wilt outside? He built this empire, yes. But he didn't do it alone. And you know it. They shifted uncomfortably, but I pressed on. When the company was collapsing, I saved it. When he needed vision, I gave it. When this house was nothing but cracked beams and dust, I made it a home. And now you call me a ghost? A burden? You celebrate his empire while you try to erase the woman who held it together? My voice broke, but I didn't let it falter. You are not just stealing from me. You are stealing from him. From the truth of what he built with me. The lawyer cleared his throat, emboldened. The documents stand. Mrs. Monroe's authority as co-founder and co-trustee is binding. Contest it if you wish, but you'll lose. And when you do, it will not only cost you money, it will cost you your name. Publicly. Tanya hissed something under her breath. Mark's face drained of color. The grandchildren, once so loud, shrank into silence. And for the first time I felt the balance shift. I gathered my papers and stood tall. This house is mine. The trust is mine. And the legacy you trample is mine. You can hate me. You can whisper in the dark. You can even wish me dead. But you will not erase me. Not again. I turned toward the door. My heart thundered, but my steps were steady. The lawyer followed, his briefcase finally in hand. Behind me, the silence was deafening. A family stripped of their illusion. A house heavy with the truth. Outside, the air was sharp and clean. The roses, thirsty no longer, lifted their heads toward the light. I stopped to touch one, its petals soft against my wrinkled fingers. For the first time since Jake's death, I felt something like breath return to my chest. They thought they had buried me, but I had bloomed instead. And this was only the beginning.